we came, before I kind of dive into things, I just wanted to get like a sense for how many people are actually considering a career in UX after graduation. Okay, awesome. Maybe, okay. I think hopefully by the end of this, like everyone in here is going to be like, let's do it. Let's become UX practitioners. So I'll start by telling you a little bit more about me. So I am a senior UX designer currently at Lockheed. I've been doing UX research and design for over 6 years now, and I did graduate in 2020 from the MSTC program. Pro pineapple on pizza, very important. So where we're going to go today is starting with just like an overview of what is user experience. And even since I've been here today, I've had a few people tell me that they're excited to hear the presentation on usability. Where it's actually like so much more. That's like one aspect of it. So I'm excited to share with you some of the other opportunities there are within the field of UX to do work that might align more with your personal interests. We'll also talk about different, within those different roles and some other things. I read my bullet wrong. So moving on to number 2, we're going to build a UX roadmap. So what can you start doing now to get yourself ready for when you are applying for jobs? And then some things to consider when you are applying. I definitely have been through several interview processes for user experience and worked at a lot of different types of companies, all doing a UX role, but with different like flavors of what they're working on. And that makes a difference. So some things to think about when you are looking at where you might want to end up. And then we'll wrap up and answer any outstanding questions that people have. So to start, what is user experience? So according to the Nielsen-Norman Group, which is kind of that gold standard in the UX world, user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. So a lot of times, I think folks think about user experience as focusing just on like that interactive element with the UI. So what is that? And it kind of like starting and stopping there, but it really doesn't. And for an example, we can talk about this grocery store. So what would be the user experience of going to the grocery store? Very frequently from the development perspective, if someone is making like the software for the self-checkout, that's the like user experience, right? Like what's happening when they're clicking that. But really it starts with realizing that you need to go to the grocery store, your drive to the store, where it's located, how easy it is to park, the availability of the foods that you're interested in, what is that like aesthetic quality, how clean is it? And then you do get to the part where you're self-checking out and you're ringing things up and pushing the buttons and having that interaction, but then you're taking them out to your car and all the way home to like where you get home. If anyone's interested later, I have a rant about fridge packs that that I think like really kind of sums it up and how that experience works. So to orchestrate an experience like this, it takes a lot of different skills. So now you're not just thinking about the actual interface and what it takes to make sure that that's usable, but you're also thinking about, the structure of the building and the location, how, people are accessing the foods, are they, too high up? And it really becomes so much more than just like a software experience. So talking about those roles in the theme of the conference, the past, present, and future. So in the past, user experience didn't exist as we like think of it. Of course, it like always has, right? So there have always been people interacting with things and having experiences, but there being a role where you're doing the actual UX of a product or service wasn't necessarily called that. So you'll hear a lot of people who started in human factors or something like that, or some type of psychology, or maybe they were actually an architect before they were interested in software development and design. And so you have these like kind of just a mixture of fields that come together, that people started to realize that there were some elements that were super important. Like if we talk to people to find out what their experience is like, we can then improve it to make it more, ideal or more helpful, more useful for them. Which shouldn't seem like such a novel concept, but there's actually a woman who started the idea of like contextual inquiry, where you go to the place that you're where like the thing that you're researching is happening, and you see how people are doing it in that context. And I got to hear her name is Karen Holtzblatt. She did a presentation a few years back in Durham. And she said at the time that she started doing this, she thought like, certainly this is not like that, new of a concept. People must have been doing this, but then came to find out that like, no, it was really something new. Today, where we are, we have a lot of UX job titles. And this is where we can start to think on, what your particular UX journey might look like. So typically you'll hear somebody, it's like a UX designer is very common, but it means so many things, like so many things. So UX designer as your job title could mean that you do, more visual design or interface design. It could mean that you do more research. You could be more of a content strategist. You could be more of a user experience strategist. There's just so much that kind of get lumped together when a company says they're looking for a UX designer. It's kind of broken down a little bit more from there for things like UX researcher. That's a very, specific, like you're focused on the research aspect of user experience. UX analyst, if you're really into math and data, you can be a UX analyst. And those are some of my favorite people because I do not do the maths good. But it's good to know about like, is this, statistically significant? Which of these designs tested better? And those are folks who will do do that analysis and then come back and say to me, this is how it shook out, but in like a very plain terms. So then I can go and do the work that I need to do from there. UX strategist, so kind of thinking about like the, like Carolyn was talking about with the content ops, it's a lot like that. We have user experience like design ops or research ops, and the strategists are thinking about that, but they're also thinking more about the like whole strategy of your user experience. So if you were the person who is in charge of the grocery store, you're like, okay, how are we going to orchestrate like this entire experience instead of just like how things are placed on like the shelves, and are getting all of the smaller teams to work together. Developers, those people who are the UX writers, this is like technical communication. They've started calling it UX writing, but it's technical communication. But you might see it as a UX writer. So this is one of the things that I think is important. And I'm definitely happy to talk to anyone about this in more detail, but there are like the job titles don't necessarily match with the like what it is you'd actually be doing. So knowing like that there are several names for the same thing. I don't want to read through all of these, but some of them that I think are particularly interesting, like accessibility specialists are focused just on that, like the 508 compliance and making sure that everyone can encounter the product or service, in a way that works for them. Usability specialist is the one everybody like thinks about when they think about user experience. Definitely doing like usability tests. It's what is taught in Doug Wall's class. I think that's one of my favorite things. It's definitely a lot of fun. It's like a whole job you can have is just like testing things. And then I want to talk about the idea of the unicorn, because like I said, you hear this UX designer job title, and then you read it and they're saying you need to have good visual design, you need to be able to do interaction design, research. We also are hoping that you can do the content strategy, and oh, can you also build it for us? And so this concept of the unicorn is like, you're just really doing everything. And I feel like that can be exhausting. Like, I don't know anyone who sets out to become, like, you may want to be a unicorn, like you want to have all the skills, but like no one who's like, yeah, that sounds like a really good like balance at work to do all of the things a little bit. So one other thing about the job titles is if you look at the stages of UX, as are shown on the slide here, these job titles can correspond to specific parts of the overall process. So if what you're really interested in is the understanding, you want to know what the requirements are, what are the real needs of the users, how are you going to define what the use cases are and balance things with what the business needs are. You might want to work more in that role or in the research role. With the sketching and design, that's where it starts to kind of transfer from the research and discovery more into the actual prototyping, wireframing, and creating something that can be tested. Here's where it is iterative though, right? So maybe you've done the research in the discovery phase, you pass this to the design folks, they design up the prototypes, and then you're able to, as a researcher, you get that back and you like do the testing on that. And then through the implementation and the evaluation, that's where you're getting more with the actual like content and the analysts who are gonna check on everything and make sure that it's working as intended, let you know like where the frictions are coming up, so you can start that cycle again. Because even though it's like linear here, it's more of a circle. Are there any questions so far? I've been talking a lot. I just want to check in and see if folks have any questions. Okay. So back to this slide. In the future, though, there's probably going to be a lot of different titles associated with user experience, especially as new technologies come out. It might not be a different job title, but it might be a different type of work that you're doing. So for example, when I started user experience, I was doing work for an e-commerce company, and it was very web-based and trying to help make it as easy as possible to buy these products. And then I went to a financial institution where we're done chatbots and was still doing user experience and still doing the same processes and using the tools that I had in my UX tool belt, but it was very different to like do UX for a conversational experience than it is for something that's more visual. So something to think about there, like you might start your UX journey and be doing something that's more like web-based, and then it could become one day you're doing stuff that's just happening in people's brains, and doesn't have like a real world interface at all. Exciting, right? Okay, so the other exciting thing, and this is where I think it gets really exciting, is that the industry matters too. So like I just mentioned, I was doing e-commerce for this company that manufactures computers. And then I went to a financial institution to do chatbots, and I was doing the same job as a UX designer, but it was very different. And I've talked to people who wanted to get into user experience, but they think of it as just like a software thing, or I'm just going to work for a tech company, like that kind of thing. But there's UX is like everywhere. It's like happening all the time. And any industry can benefit from user experience. So if you're really interested in like that healthcare and like hospital work, but you also want to do user experience, you can do that. If you want to work on like sustainable energy features, you can do UX for a company that does that. So really, like if you can just think of like the possible combinations of all of these things, like any industry combined with like these very exciting, more specified job roles, and you can have like a very fun career. And you can also kind of like shake it up every once in a while if you get kind of bored, and like move more into like different skills. So if you start as like a designer and you think, oh, I want to get more into research and I want to work on game design, you can do that. It's like a choose your own adventure for your career, where you never have to leave the like profession of user experience, but you can keep doing stuff that's like new and exciting. So yeah, wow, that is exciting. Got ahead of myself on that. All right, so the one thing though that is important and is common throughout all of these is having a solid foundation. So all of the UX roles need to have a general knowledge of UX. Here are some resources. I think the slides are made available, so these are all linked out. These are some of my favorite places to go and learn more. Nielsen Norman Group, we quoted them at the beginning. Fantastic. They have so many articles. TryUXPA is our local user experience professionals association, and they are also phenomenal. You can become a member. They're having like a sale right now. You can be a member for $10. Only $10. That's such a good deal for like a year of discounts on events. Yeah, because they get some really like big name people. Like Karen Holtzblatt talk that I went to, TryUXPA. So they like bring people in who are like, you know, based in like other states, and they'll like have them come to talk to us. And also Rosenfeld Media is my favorite place for books related to user experience. I have never read that Rosenfeld book. And they're also really nice. Okay, so once you have your general baseline knowledge where you know about all of the different roles and the things and the like principles behind user experience, this is when you start to cultivate your specialization and pick that as like those skills that differentiate what the role you choose is from the other ones. So this is going to sound pretty similar to the early career panel. Some of the things to do is like a discovery phase on your specialization. I feel like we all learn about this looking at job postings from Dr. Ding to get those buzzwords and the skills and tools. So pulling in as many of those as you can find, and seeing what are those like common factors that you're reading. So if you want to be a designer and everyone is using Sketch, you should take some classes in Sketch and be familiar with it, so at your interview you can say, yeah, I know about Sketch. But if like the things are shifting in like the industry and now more people are using XD, like that's where you would want to start to cultivate more skills. It is good to have like knowledge of many tools. They're all kind of pretty much the same with some differences. But that's where you would find those out and find out like specific buzzword knowledges that you want to be, you know, learning more about as you go. Also talking to folks who are in that role. That's another thing that's nice about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is getting like so many like, you know, +1s today. If you find people on LinkedIn, like user experience people love to talk about user experience. So if you find someone who has a career in user experience at a company that you're interested in, you can reach out to them and say, I just want to know about, you know, what that's like, and they'll probably talk to you. Also, like the TryUXPA, they have, they call them GUIs. So, you know, like a graphic user interface is a GUI. This is the beverage user interface, and it's just them gathering together in a place locally to have a beverage and talk shop. So you will be able to meet a lot of cool people at those events. And any of like the in-person or online, they use this very awesome tool for the online events where you actually can sit down at tables with people virtually. And it doesn't still have that same like awkwardness of if somebody sat down at your table and started talking to you and then you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, but I can't just walk away. And then also doing Google searches and reaching out to like those professional associations, not just local one, there's a national one, there's other, you know, specialized professional associations. And you can, you know, find out again more specifically. Take courses, grow your skills, never stop learning, always keep growing. And the one thing that I cannot stress enough is getting a mentor to help shape your approach. When people ask me how I got into UX, I think I would not have made the transformation as easily if I hadn't had a mentor who could see things in my experience and my interests that I didn't know were relatable. So my first role in user experience was at that e-commerce company, and I've been working as a project manager prior to that. And I did not want to be a project manager anymore. I wanted to get into UX, but there was an opening for a user experience specialist, which was a UX project manager. And that was like my in to get my first UX title job, was by just pairing like skills that I already had with skills that they wanted as part of a UX team. So something too, when we're going to take a few minutes and a little bit to kind of think through your own approach and what your plan might be. And so something to consider is like listing out what your current skills are, where you feel the strongest, and they might not be the ones that you want to keep doing forever, but they are the ones that you might be able to pair with something to get where you want to go. Okay, this next part is very fun. I think this is a exciting time with the gaining experience. So one thing that you will see for UX roles is a portfolio. So people are going to want to see like some kind of demonstrated experience. And what they don't want to see is something that wasn't, I don't want to say that wasn't real, but what is real? I don't know, it's like a philosophical question that we are not going to answer in this presentation. But what I mean by that is something where you had constraints, where it wasn't something that you decided to like, I'm going to do the UX process to redo like the Twitter app, which is a thing people sometimes try to do for their portfolios. And it's a little bit less helpful because you don't know what's going on with, Twitter and their, struggles and stuff and what they're needing to accomplish and their like constraints. So it's like, yeah, you could kind of Monday morning quarterback a existing service, but it's less helpful to see what you would actually do if you did know more about the frictions that are occurring. So some ways to start to get the experience are applying for internships. I'm not going to say the name of this company right, but in Durham, there's it's Viget, VIGET. And every year I've seen they offer an internship for a designer and a researcher, and they're like a paid multi-month, I think, internship. So that's an awesome way to go. Another thing you can do is helping local nonprofits and small businesses that you frequent. So if there's a nonprofit that you really care about, and maybe their website is, you go on there and you're like, oh, this is confusing. I think you could do better. Looking at you, animal shelters. I like to look at cats on the like the available cats, and sometimes it's really confusing. And then like the process is, and then like sometimes you have to email somebody, and sometimes you have to, fill out a form. But it's like very right for someone to help them to like volunteer their time to redo that that process. And by like talking to them, you would learn like, well, why are we emailing sometimes and other times you're filling out like this form. So there's just like opportunities like that where you can really get those like real world like experiences that are going to show really well in a portfolio. And we'll talk about portfolios at the end because I hate them just because they take a lot of time to do. And but some other opportunities if you wanted to work on getting experiences, like volunteering for Code for America. I know there's Code for Durham is pretty active, and they'll post like what projects are coming up, and then when they need like user experience help, and that's a good way to get to learn from other people who are helping to support the project, and get those portfolio pieces. And then also, if you can, ask to assist like a UX practitioner, especially people who are freelancers. Sometimes they'll let you know that they're interested in getting some help on an upcoming usability test, and you can shadow them and work with them, and that's a great portfolio piece too. All right, let's do an activity. Let me make sure I'm okay on time. What time did we start at?
4 o'clock, 3:25.
Cool, perfect. So for the activity, we're going to start to think about our UX journeys. So using a piece of paper or Google Doc or whatever you want to write on, if you want to just do it in your head, you can do that too. Start to list out what the UX roles are that you might want to you might want to pursue. And I'll flip back to that slide while we do this so you can have that list to refer to. And then think about like what industries you're interested in working in. Is there something that maybe you learned in the MSTC program that you didn't know about, like you're like really into like science now? You know, what are those industries that you're considering? List out the skills and experience that you already have that might be a good either standalone, like if you have research experience, you have design experience, or something that you could pair like project management or like strategy experience. And then think about the skills that you might need to build and some opportunities that might be out there to get the hands-on experience. So for that one, not only think about the hands-on experience for like the type of UX role that you want, but also for the like industry. So if there's all I can think about is that the fish video from the you know, when the fish guy comes to class, Dr. Faye's class, like all I can think is like now everyone wants to work in the fish industry, and I don't know why that came to my mind, but so like try to think of like, well, how can you get experience in the fishing industry? I don't know, think about whatever you want to get experience in, but the point for that is the, you know, the role and then the industry, and then thinking about what are some potential opportunities for getting real experience in that specific field. And then let me know if you have any questions or want to talk about specific ideas, and I'll stop talking for a little bit and I'll probably come around and ask you things. And then we'll have a little bit of time to share if anyone had exciting stuff come up for them. Well, this is a good question. I'm gonna think, I see the question, Joseph, and I'm gonna think about it and then tell you the answer.
So I did a usability test for my thesis project, and I did a usability test for a local nonprofit in Boone called Hunger and Health Solutions.
Yeah.
I did a test of their mobile platform, and I was specifically focusing on issues.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, but I like had to like do all this data analysis myself. I just kind of like crunched the numbers. I don't even know if it's like legit. What's the mean using the mode and what does it mean?
I'm gonna say no one has ever asked me that
Okay.
in like a professional setting. So if that's comforting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I had like a bunch of templates. My professor gave me from usability.gov, and they told me what to do for calculations, so I just did those.
Yeah.
But they're pretty simple. So if that like kind of specific, that's the kind of thing that goes into being an analyst. I think it's really fun.
So the analysts can do like even more cool stuff than like the simple calculations. I would say those are like the calculations like a researcher would do. But the analysts will like set up like intense experiments. So like for the e-commerce example, we want to redo the pages, and we want 4 different designs, which is going to be the one that's going to get the best results. So yeah, the analysts set that up in a tool that switches the experiences for people. So like it just diverts the traffic 4 different ways. And then weighted into the the statistically significant number. And then they were able to like read the data that they got back and tell us. They're more like that quantitative focus.
Right.
And they can say, well, this is what happened, and like tell the story about it. So I think that's really cool. I love those people. They'll also be the one that creates the maps of how the traffic goes through the site. So you give them all like the data from the tool that's collecting that, and they can process it differently. So like Tableau is a good tool to know for that. And yeah, really, if you know about like analytics and math type things and user experience, like that's such a good combo. Because sometimes you'll have somebody like research and say, well, these are the questions that I have. Can you help me answer them? And then just analysts make the experiment or a tool to help like answer those questions. Are you an industry you're interested in?
I'm an incoming student.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
So I'm graduating from undergrad.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have so much time.
Yeah, I'm fresh. I don't I don't know what I want yet.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I just know that I did my thesis on usability and I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm happy for it.
Yeah. Do it. There's
Yeah.
like it's so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Dr. Walls teaches a couple classes in usability and information architecture. I don't know if you've like
I'm
dug
taking
into
Title 8 in the fall, which I
Nice.
think is the
usability.
So
That was so cool. If you teach us the information architecture class, that one was my favorite.
was that 519?
I think so.
Like the second class that we did. Yeah.
Yeah. It was the one where he taught us like scraping stuff up.
But I'm like,
And that's another thing analysts do, like they can do the analysis of like the text and the sentiments and stuff, like they're all analysis. Yeah, just like for I'm excited for you. You're gonna have so much fun.
I'm excited.
It is like so much good stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna go back up here and finish the presentation, but definitely let me give you my contact before we leave. And if you have any questions or you want to like talk about anything, I'm accepting mentees because all of my mentees are moving on with their lives.
That's sad.
In a good way, right? Like, in a good way. All right, so okay, great. So what did you all think? Did anybody come up with like some ideas of next steps or potential projects you could start to gain experience?
I think I really like the idea of like volunteering or like working with local nonprofits and things like that. Like I never really thought that, you know, you could do that, but then after you mentioned that, I was thinking like in Dr. Walls' class at 508, that's basically what we do. Like we do usability tests for SciStarter, which I think it has like a lot of ties to NC State and like citizen science and things like that. So that's definitely a good idea that
You know what you should ask Dr. Walls is the number of times that he's had people do usability testing on SciStarter at this point. Like,
I was gonna ask that.
I know me
I was like,
too.
does everybody, did we all do that?
We did it. Have any of the changes been
I would want to know if the changes have been implemented, and then also there is a very cool project that could happen with the looking at the stuff over time and like how things have changed and the improvements. So if anybody's like looking for a capstone, like there's something there.
Yeah.
Okay, I already have an idea. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting and like kind of super meta that he's like creating data, like he's like doing like baseline like snaps and capturing that. But I don't know like what is happening with that afterwards. Okay. Okay, so now we're talking about portfolio. My favorite topic. I don't love portfolios just because I really like done the project and gotten the results. I'm like really excited, and then having to go back and do like the documentation of it to show to someone for like a potential job is I don't know. It's just not my favorite part for sure. So these really like the point of them though is to demonstrate that you've got the knowledge like technically and also technically. So these can come in a variety of formats. You might consider like a professional website and like having one up. You could do either like a PDF, a PowerPoint presentation, like really anything like that. You want to shoot for about 3 to 5 pieces, so 3 to 5 projects that you've done, and highlight them in order of like showing your strongest work or the specific skills that you want to highlight. So if you're like a designer who wants to get more into research, like highlight the projects that you've done that are like where you participated more in the research. The strongest work is going to look like where you had the most, like you personally were doing the most work in the project. It was for something that people are using, and definitely if you can include like a business value metric. So if you know the animal shelter example, you know, they can say, this is how many cats on average we adopt out per month. And then you do your project. And now like maybe they were adopting out like 25 cats before, and now it's like 300 cats. And you can say like, wow, that's like a very big increase since I got involved and, you know, spruced up your website a little bit. So things like of that are like, those show really well in portfolios and show that you know the value of UX, and also that you can, like, you know how to put that into words, because it's like a very hard thing sometimes with UX being the experience. Like there are things that we measure, but sometimes it is hard to articulate like what does a better experience mean. So if you can show anything like that, that is very helpful. You definitely want to give the context and the why for the project. So don't just jump in with what you did, but say this was a, we'll stick with the animal shelter so we don't go back to the fish. So you got like a, you know, I partnered with the Wake County Animal Shelter to improve their website. They, you know, their goal was to increase adoptions of cats. So to do that, I did, and then you like are stating your role and like the things that you specifically did. So like I did the research, I did the, you know, I created wireframes and mock-ups, usability tested them, monitored after like deployment, like that kind of stuff. Making sure that you are like describing your process and putting in like sample artifacts and deliverables. So if you have a picture of a mock-up, or you've got like, you're talking about the website and maybe you've got side by side, like this is what it was, this is what it is now. So anything that gives like some, just a little bit of like visual into what you're working on. And then it's okay to show work that other people did, as long as you're clearly stating what you specifically contributed and what they contributed. So you wouldn't want to say, like if you worked as part of a team who was doing the animal shelter website, you wouldn't want to put it out there like, I did all of this. But you would want to say like, as part of a team, this was our goal. This is what I specifically contributed. Here's how it, helped us with our success. Talk about the issues. This is so important. It's really helpful when, you're looking at a portfolio to not just hear like the awesome stuff. You could say, one of the big issues that we had was they ran out of budget, and so we couldn't complete the project. Like that's an okay thing to say. Or we ran into something that happened where we had to get like approvals, or just like anything that is not perfect about the process, and how you overcame it is really helpful because it shows a lot of like what you would do if you needed to be flexible. And then if you can share where the project is now. So it is helpful if you can say, here's the link to the animal shelter website, check it out, adopt a cat, it's going to be awesome. And then I think I have a couple minutes left to hit on some things to expect when you're applying. This is going to be a lot like any other job interview process. Read the job description, not just the title before deciding to apply. So as we talked about earlier, UX titles are still not exactly standardized. So UX designer could be a lot of things, especially within different companies. So really read what it says you would be doing before deciding. Again, you'll likely be asked to provide a portfolio or work sample. And you're going to want to be prepared to speak in detail about one of your pieces and like really tell the story and paint them that like end to end, like here's what happened. Some employers may ask you to do a design challenge type activity. So it'd be something like they would say, okay, well, we want to know what you would do, like what your process is like. So imagine that we're going to make a website for an animal shelter, and here is like the information that you have. What would you do next? And they would want to hear you like maybe whiteboard or talk through like the research. So that's a way to show that like, the process. So if they're saying like, and go design it, and the first thing you do is not say, well, what research do we have? Like that would be something they would be looking for. Also be wary if they ask for free work. I have applied to some places that like in the application, they're like, what are the top 3 things you would fix about our website? And it's like, well, one, I can't tell you that because I don't know like any of the context for your situation. And also, do you want to like hire me and then I'll fix all the things? And that particular one, I went to an interview for them. And when I got there, I was like, so I see that you took the suggestions that I made and you've already implemented them on your website. Yeah, I did not want to work there because that just didn't seem like a great environment. And lastly, just keep growing. Never stop learning. Like at the beginning, I mentioned with all of the different ways you can combine like the roles in UX and the industry and the types of products and services. You can choose your own adventure, make it fun. Okay, questions? Does anybody have questions?